Welcome back to our AI marketing workflow series. I'm Kendel. I've got Peter Pilarski from the Tourism AI Network and Gerardo Corro with me. Last episode, we talked about getting unstuck. So moving from skepticism to personal AI use to bigger thinking. And today we're diving into that messy middle. So how do you make AI a team member? How do you handle data security? How do you integrate AI into workflows without freaking everyone out? So with that said, we're going to jump right in. So Peter, when DMOs think about giving AI access to their files, I think a lot of people panic. We kind of mentioned it in the first episode here that there's a lot of fear around data security. What's the real concern here? And do you think it's overblown?
So I'm going to just go out and say it. I think people use this as an excuse not to do AI more than it being a legitimate concern. No, I mean, I really do think that. But, definitely there's some concerns, especially when we're using free tools and we don't have kind of parameters in place, right? So again, I'm going to go back to number one, you need responsible AI policies and principles. And part of those policies and principles are what are the approved AI tools that you're allowed to use, right? And so, part of that conversation needs to be a technology stack conversation. So I always start with what is the technology you're using? You're a Google company? Well, guess what? Google already has access to all your files. And so, using Google Gemini, you're not really doing anything new or different. It already has access to your files. So to me, there's a lot of, it is overblown from that perspective. Now, there are tools like ChatGPT and Claude and others, and definitely a lot of other tools that I would be very concerned about. And so, the other thing I tell people is when you're using AI tools, make sure you're using a legitimate AI tool from a trusted company. Do research if you need to on who's on the board of directors, who's the investors. Is this a company that a lot of people are using? Don't go use some new fringe AI tool that nobody's ever heard about and start giving it access to your tools, because that's where the risks happen, right? But tools like Google Gemini, tools like Anthropic's Claude, tools like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. These are the leading AI tools that, quite frankly, billions and billions of people around the world are using. They have a lot to lose when it comes to, data leaks. And so they have as much to lose and be concerned about as you do. But having said that, you also need to know to go into your settings and make sure that it's not set up to train on the data that you provide it, right? So there are things to know and understand about the tools and permissions and things like that, which all should be in your responsible AI use policies and principles, right? And so, we did an AI adoption with an organization where it's like everybody was just using whatever they wanted for free. And it's like, man, there's a lot of risk around here, right? So again, as a leader, your job is to lead your organization and have a conversation about risk, approve the tools, make sure people understand the settings, and then you should be pretty good to go.
How do you help a team member through this? Or have you had conversations with other DMOs or colleagues where you are speaking to them about, legitimate fears and legitimate caution from, let's say, or fear? Have you had to help anyone work through that? Or how do you help your team or lead your team through those conversations?
Well, what I have seen is that on those demos that have adopted or are adopting AI, most of them have at least a non-written policy as a minimum, especially for small teams. It's like, what can we do and what can we not do? And maybe the biggest line that people have been drawing is do not share the files. Do not give access to the files or the shared folders of the company. But even if they do it, as Peter said, like if you're a Google company, it's already in there. Right? So decide on which platforms to use. I know some companies and some DMOs do have the policies, but not necessarily follow it. And I won't give names, of course. But some of my colleagues and myself, we've talked about that. Like, how do you know that all your staff is aware that those policies exist and actually follow them? Because it's very easy on a non-formal operation or just way of doing things when we see all those disclaimers and accept, and then just go to next steps on any platform. We do it like everyone does it, like when we're making a reservation, when we're downloading a platform, an app. So how do we actually, especially with entry-level staff or trainees or staff that don't normally have that high level of responsibility, but sometimes we'll be working with those tools that potentially will give access to information that we don't want to give access to or allow more than we would like to. How do we make them understand that there's a policy, like actually communicate that policy to the team, especially if we have a lot of rotation? and that they actually apply it, because it's very easy to just click accept or next, right? So I would put it there.
So I agree 100%. So having a policy is useless if nobody knows what it is. So culture, right? So reviewing the policies, making people sign off that they understand the policies. But there's some other things you can do as well. So for example, having team accounts to AI tools. So for example, our team uses Claude AI quite extensively. And so I am the super admin on our Claude AI account. And so I have ultimate control over who has access to what. I can give access to. The other thing people need to understand is you can give access to not your entire drive. You can give access to specific files. So the other thing that people want to consider doing is creating files just for AI to access, right? So these are just the approved files that AI can access, doesn't give access. And then you as the super admin can control that, right? And so there are mechanisms and tools in place with the right tools, like team-based tools, where you can have a lot of control over these things. And, you can limit some of the maybe mishaps that you don't want to see happening, right? But back to Gerardo's point is communication. And so, you know what I mean? Examples, like giving people examples in those policies, talking about it, right? All of that kind of stuff really matters a lot.
And then the training, of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
Constant training.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of training, we often talk about this, Peter, that AI is like a team member, right? So it's not just a tool, it's like a new member of your team starting. So what does that look like in practice?
Yeah. So inside tools, like again, I'm just talking about out of the box AI tools like ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude or whatever, you can build. So, I always explain it to people is that AI is built on the world's information. It's not built on your company's information, right? So it doesn't really know anything about your company, its context, your values, any of that kind of stuff. So these tools have the ability to train mini versions of them. So in, for example, projects or custom GPTs or gems, these are the different names of these different mini projects or mini AIs. And you can train those on your context, right? So you can add files, you can give it instructions, you can give it examples of what good looks like, right? And you can kind of train it. And so what I tell people when we're building tools inside a ChatGPT, for example, just say, and we're building custom GPTs or projects, is that we want to build really narrow projects that are very specialized. So they're like little specialist helpers, right? And so you know this, Kendel. I think our team has probably, 500 projects because we have many clients, and each client has 3 or 4 specialized helpers to help us with different aspects of those, right? So again, it's not. Don't think about this as I'm going to build a project that's going to be the Peter's replacement AI tool. It's Peter's on-brand LinkedIn writer. It's Peter's strategic partner. It's Peter's, I just created a project that I've been working with that's helping me negotiate and understand a contract with a partner that I'm working with, right? So it's specialized on the contract and what's important to me and the other partner in terms of like the goals of the contract and all of this kind of stuff, right? So we could build these specialized little mini versions of the AI inside the bigger AI tool on our information and make them really specialized and really valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it actually amazes me when I hear that, people who say they're avid AI users, but they've never created a custom project or, because they are really quite easy to set up. And if you're doing something more than a few times, it's so beneficial to have that tool to, help you do it. And what I love about Claude, I'll just a little plug for Claude here, is one time I asked my project to do something different. I was like, oh, can you, do it like this? And it was like, no, you told me that the format should be like this. So are you telling me to do it differently? And I was like, oh, yes, good point. So like, it's like a team member in that way, right? It helps keep you on track. Gerardo,
You
how
can
do you
design
help? No, you go ahead.
Sign it and prompt it and train it in a way that it could have almost its own personality. It just follows rules. I mean, that's what it does. So we found that very very useful, and at both narrowing it at a certain range of activities, topics, even the tone that it can speak in. I'm thinking about the AI chatbot that we have on our website. It's been very interesting, the training that we have given to ourselves to train it, understanding it, and then like being able to keep polishing the way these one of the many pieces of AI that we use operates. So it's interesting to see the before and after, when at the beginning it was making a lot of mistakes, and it's not because it was not working. It had not been prompted correctly. And now it has.
And it's a really important point. I'm going to just jump in on that. When you were building these little AI team members and these little custom tools, it's like it's an iterative process. It's just like a staff person. You don't bring in a staff person and say, "Oh, go write my strategic plan," and then fire them when they didn't do a perfect job when they had no information or context. No, you work with them, you make it better. Here's how we change it. Oh, here's the. And so it's the same process, right? So it's just like training a new employee, right? And so it's a really useful way, I think, to think about it. Because I think that's the other thing that I hear from people sometimes going back to the last episode. Oh, I tried it once and it just didn't work good. It's not the tool.
Yeah.
You just didn't do it properly. Sorry to tell you, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
iteration.
Absolutely.
Gerardo, how do you help your team define like AI's role in your organization? Or, do you encourage them to ask questions on when AI is used, or, is everyone pretty good about using it to, add value where they think it adds the most value? And I'm asking because I receive a newsletter from a marketing team, and their big thing in their newsletter is written by humans. And that's like kind of their marketing, and whether or not it's true, I'm not sure, but it's definitely used as a marketing thing there. So, how do you help your team kind of define AI's role in your organization?
So as we know, this is evolving and advancing so fast that I would like to say that we establish rules and they're not going to be moved. But no, we're constantly adapting and having new rules on what we can do and we cannot. So we normally have the AI tools that we are already using and that we have already discussed, and we have this non-written but discussed policy on how far we can take it. So those are the tools that we are constantly using for content creation, for some of the blog writing, et cetera. And then we have, as we mentioned on the past episode, we have the AI Thursdays, or AI used to be AI Fridays, where we go and explore on a personal level different applications, different AI systems. And then if we find them useful or interesting, or even if we don't know if it's going to be useful, we bring them to the table and potentially we'll adapt new ones to our operations, and then they become part of the everyday.
So back to iteration.
Yeah.
Which I think is where a lot of people get stuck in these conversations and bringing in new tools, because they want, they're so used to, let's say, having a policy or a way of doing something, and that is the way it's always been, the way that they want it to always be. And then, we're talking in our conversation right now, it's like these things take a lot of change and you have to be okay with that change. And I know from our experience, Peter, it's like, okay, we write a policy and then a month later, a new tool comes out and it changes how we do things, and it's like updating that again. And so, yeah, there really is kind of that need to stay flexible, which is difficult. Yeah. Awesome. So, Peter, I like through all of the people we've worked with and organizations we've talked to, do you have a good example kind of at the top of your head where a DMO that has successfully integrated AI into a specific workflow that you could tell us
Sure.
about?
Many. I'll pick on Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, or TOTA, which is, we went through a whole AI adoption framework process with them. We talked to every single one of their team members about how they use it, and we came up with basically a list of custom GPTs, or these little specialized helpers for each person in terms of their role, right? And so I'm just going to, since this is a kind of a marketing segment, the marketing department, we created a press release writing GPT, right? And it was just, here's 10 previous press releases. Here's the style tile, like the tone guide for TOTA, those types of things. And so we fed all of that information in, and here's an empty template of what basically the template should look like, right? And so now all of a sudden, they basically just put in the information for what's supposed to go into the press release, and the tool is specialized and built to write them perfect press releases every single time, right? So that's just one example. There are many, and you basically have to think across your entire organization, every person's job. There's probably 5 or 6 custom GPTs that you can create, or custom AI specialized helpers for each person's job, right? That can help them execute their work. That's just one on the marketing side.
Yeah. And just talking about like, a hard part of that implementation or where people struggle. I know, and I don't know if you recall this, you probably do, but we did have one client who was struggling developing their custom AI project because they were asking it to do so many things in one project, right? Like it was write the thing, SEO optimize it, and asking it to do. Can you just speak to that a little bit too?
Yeah. So again, narrow is better than wide, right? So think about these as we're adding very narrow, specialized specialists to our team, right? They're not generalists. Generalists is our job, right? We're creating these narrow specialized helpers. And when we try to get it to do too much, that's when it starts to hallucinate. That's when it starts to make mistakes. That's when it just sort of gets lost, right? And so understanding how these tools work is they can kind of get into these loops and these sort of like loops that they get lost in, and then they just don't produce a good output after that, right? So yeah, to me, it's just the narrower, the better to an extent of reasonableness. So again, if you're a small DMO, maybe you just have one marketing and communications GPT, right? Maybe you have kind of one that's a marketing one that's a communication one, right? You don't need 30 of them, but you do want to make them narrow.
I'm going to keep picking on you here for a second. So when we work with these teams and like going into this training, or when you're at a conference, like everyone is hyped up and, they're using it, there's buy-in. Where do you often see people stall out or like plateau, let's say?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Everybody gets excited. And then they stall out when it doesn't do exactly what they want perfectly the first time. And again, that's where the iteration piece comes in, right? And so, yeah, it's like, okay, so that's what we show people, right? When we do AI training, it's like, okay, let's build it. So this is actually a mantra that my Christina, my wife, has for 2026. Make it exist, then make it perfect. Don't try to make it perfect right away, right? So make it exist, test it, see how it works, figure out what it did and didn't do, then go back and iterate it, make it better, right?
Love it.
Yeah. 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 It's a great mantra, right? And then if you do it that way, first of all, even if it gets you to 80% of the way there, you should always still be the human in the loop to make it perfect, right? Even if your AI doesn't get it there. So that's just step one as well to keep in mind, right? But over time, you can get it pretty perfect, in my opinion.
Amazing. Yeah, we often talk about these AI champions and organizations too. So, Gerardo, would you say that you are the AI champion for your organization, or do you have someone else on your team, or are you all?
No, I'm 100% the AI champion.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's pro AI. Some of us with a little bit more cautious or are more cautious about it, but everyone's happy to adopt it and learning and using new platforms. So, but yes, I'm the one pushing it in a nice way.
Yeah. How do you?
Not
Yeah.
forcing anyone, but
Yeah.
I'm very, I just encourage it constantly. And just going back to Peter's point, I think it's very important that we are experts in what we do. So AI is a tool and it's not telling us what to do. It can tell us how to do it or improve it, give it structure. But if we don't know what we do or what we want, it's very hard to ask someone, even if we had a specialist, AI or human. If we don't know what we want, it's very hard to ask for it. So we need to be experts in our field if we want the AI to perform at its best. The good thing is that AI sometimes can suggest those things, and then it's a back and forth conversation. So it's not only input and output, but it can be a back and forth conversation where we get ideas and improve our own ideas. But it's important that we have that baseline and that knowledge from before.
Yeah.
So we can give
Such
the
a good point.
instruction. Yeah, because I mean, if you don't know what the outcome should look like, it's very hard to prompt it or to ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go back to last episode. I mentioned this conversation I had with somebody who was in this sort of what I call the trough of disillusionment when it comes to AI. His challenge is, and this is exactly to your point, Gerardo, is that he tried to use what's called a vibe coding tool. So there's these tools out there where you can, what's called vibe coding, which is basically build code with AI, with natural language. And he tried to build, this insanely complex, he called it an app. It's not even the right word, to run his entire organization. And then he's like disillusioned that AI doesn't work. And it's like, you're not a coder. You know what I mean? You have no idea what you're doing. Like, it's not you're not in your lane. You know what I mean? And so, and I started talking to him about actually what you're thinking about doing is like you need to build infrastructure, like data infrastructure. You need to become a data, it's not a vibe coding tool. It's like, to your point, it's like stay in your lane. If you're a marketer and a destination marketer, then use AI for destination marketing and you'll know how to prompt it. You'll know what the output should look like. You'll know you'll know how to fix it if it's not right. Right? If you're not a coder, leave it to the coders. I mean, you can try and experiment and do some things, but like at the end of the day, those tools if you're a coder, those tools can make you the best and most efficient, effective coder ever. Amazing. If you're not, it's a real challenge.
Also, I think in the best case, if you don't know what you're doing, you will get something that is clearly wrong, and you can just step back and redo it. But in the worst case, you get something that looks right, but it's not. Because we talked about that at another conversation Peter and I had. AI, it's like a major bullshitter. Like it tells everything, it says everything with so much security that you will
Mhm.
believe it. So if you don't know what you're talking about, if you're not, let's not say an expert, but if you are not familiar with the topic you're working with, you need to double check. It could be that it says it or it puts it in a way that it looks well done, and maybe it's not, and then you could buy it, and then if you're delivering that to a third person or a third party, you could be the one. It's your reputation that is on the table.
100%.
Yeah, there's lots of examples of that out there, that's for sure.
Also, it's not great at math
Getting
yet.
better, though. Getting better.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's improving so rapidly that
I just want to circle back a little bit to the topic of plateauing. I know, Peter, we do talk about that AI champion a lot. So I think that that is one way that organizations can help with the plateau is by having an internal champion and someone who is constantly like, setting the meetings, or setting the AI Thursdays or bringing new suggestions to the team. But do either of you have any suggestions or ideas like how do you keep that person motivated? And I'm asking because like I mentioned, at my days in the DMO world, incorporating like a new CRM, like that was my role, was to like be the champion of that and try to get everyone on board. Oh my God, that can just be like pulling teeth, trying to get people excited about something if they're not kind of naturally excited already. Yeah. Do either of you have any suggestions or tips for teams on how to like empower an AI champion?
Yeah, for sure. I do. And it goes back to my political campaigning days, where when we think about political campaigning, first you have three buckets of people. You have the people that are already firmly in your camp and your supporters and your champions and your cheerleaders. You have the middle, who are the convincible people that haven't made their decision yet. And then you have the people that are against you. And so, obviously, let your champion know who the other champions are and have them working together. Start with the people that are in the middle, that are kind of just need a little bit of help, a little bit of, you know what I mean? And then, eventually the third group will probably come along, or something else will happen. Maybe they won't be there anymore. I don't know. But you know what I mean? But it's just sort of like be strategic about kind of how you're approaching the topic of AI. The cool thing about AI adoption compared to, say, a CRM adoption, which is maybe the most painful process anybody can go through in their life from a tech adoption perspective, is that AI really quickly gives people aha moments, right? So I always see the spark when I do a one-on-one training with somebody, where it's like you show them something and it does something, and they're like, "Oh my God." And it's like, aha, now I see where this can happen. So that's the cool thing about AI, is it doesn't take much and these sparks are there quickly. And so it's easy to turn those middle people into champions pretty quickly. And so, that's kind of my advice of where to start.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to say, my next question was going to be like, what's that one tip to get AI to actually stick? Like, how do we get that integration to stick? So I think that aha moment is getting people on your team, like maybe the people that are against you or against the idea. If you can show them one thing that makes their lives easier, that's such a great starting point for someone to have that moment. And oh my God, this actually can help me, right?
I had this conversation again with somebody yesterday in tourism, and they're like, "Oh, well, AI doesn't work for us because tourism is a people business." And I was like, "Oh, well, like for sure, but like, is all you do all day is just be with people, or no? Well, I have to do this on a computer, and I have to do." So it's like, yes, there are many parts of tourism that are people business, but there are many parts that are not. And what I tell people is actually, if you can get the AI working for you, you could do more time with the people and better, you can focus better on the people, right? So it's actually an enhancer of the people side of the business, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Gerardo, we're going to kind of start wrapping up here, but do you have maybe kind of similar to the last episode, like an action item or just one thing that if a DMO is listening and kind of wants to move from personal use to team integration, what's something that they could do this week to get that ball moving?
I would say set tiny goals that can be turned into quick wins. So whatever you're doing, go a little bit further, a little bit. Just try to integrate it in something that you're already doing and see if it works, but do it as a goal. I mean, yes, in an exploratory way, but have a goal. What do we want this AI to do for us? And try it. Something little, something small every week.
Well, no better time than January to be setting goals to achieve. So it's a great, if you don't have your resolution yet, I think that's a good resolution to carry forward through this year. We will wrap up this second series here. And what we covered were, data concerns are real, but they're manageable. AI works best when you treat it like a team member with a clear role and be willing to iterate and be open-minded and treat it like a team member who needs some handholding sometimes to work their best. And if you want it to stick, find that internal champion who can, keep the ball moving. So next episode, we are going to go long term. So how do we actually build an AI roadmap for our organization? What skills do people need? How to develop them? And all that good stuff. So once again, if you have any ideas or topics that you'd like to hear us talk about, you can send us a message or comment on the episode below. But until then, we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for the conversation today.
Thank you.